Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome. My name is Natasha Garonia, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this opening of the 10th edition of Financial Inclusion Week. This event has grown to become one of the largest virtual events convened on the topic of inclusive finance today. I'm thrilled to see all of you join us to kick off this 10th Financial Inclusion Week that I hope will be useful to you. As you join us, I'd love to ask you to introduce yourselves by writing in the chat where are you joining us from today. Welcome, everyone. I would like to thank everyone who submitted sessions and responded to our requests in order to create this Financial Inclusion Week. I would also like to thank our selection committee that worked behind the scenes. This year, the following individuals served on the Financial Inclusion Week selection committee: Joanna Ledgerwood, Isvari Sivalingam, Jayshree Venkatesan, Abby Burrell, Rima Patel, Kartik Venkataraman, Chris Coxon, and Eduardo Totolo. Thank you to all of them. At this time, we would also like to thank our sponsors and supporters for this event. Our diamond sponsor is the Citi Foundation. Our supporters are Conrad and Hilton Foundation and Jersey Overseas Aid. This year, we selected the theme of Financing the Future, shaping the next decade of inclusive finance. It gives us the opportunity to reflect on how we have evolved in the past decade and think of what else we need to put in place to serve the 2 billion people who remain underserved by formal financial services. It has been 10 years since the Center for Financial Inclusion began this convening. I'm struck by the progress the sector has made since then. We have grown in size, and the landscape of providers has changed. Today, financial inclusion as an industry attracts $74 billion in funding, according to the recent CGAP funder survey. In the past decade, as Findex figures show us, we have reduced the gender gap in access to formal financial services from 9 percentage points to 6 percentage points globally. We have also seen a sharp increase in access numbers. We have reached this point of success in our industry because of all of you who work to contribute to this sector. I know that you have dedicated your careers to ensuring that underserved people across the world have access to financial services so they can lead better lives. To help us see a retrospective of the last decade and where we still need to go, we reached out to a few of you and asked you to reflect on the past 10 years and what is still left for us to do. As we know from our work in the industry, and as we will hear from our colleagues in this recording, the work that lies ahead of us in this industry is perhaps even tougher than what has been done so far. With growing geopolitical risks, climate shocks, and macroeconomic challenges facing several countries, the interplay of these factors can impact the most vulnerable households and businesses. It also threatens to undo the gains we have achieved in the past few years. And while the growth has been impressive, we have seen a corresponding rise in the number of risks that consumers face. I personally, and I know that many of you, worry about issues like client over-indebtedness that are emerging in some markets, as delivery of financial products and business models has become more complex and fragmented in oversight and regulation. At the same time, we continue to see the effects of climate change. The effects are the hardest on those who are the most vulnerable. Finance and technology are both tools, as we know, and they present both opportunities and risks. However, as we evaluate these, we need to make sure that the costs are not disproportionately borne by the most vulnerable in the system, and that the upsides are not enjoyed by a select segment of consumers. We need much more research and systematic collection of metrics beyond access and efficiency gains to make the argument of impact strongly. I recently read a sentence that really resonated with me. It said, "Diversity enhances resilience." As we navigate this post-pandemic world, policymakers face two challenges. They need to replenish buffers that were lost during the pandemic and to ensure economic growth takes place, all the while maintaining price stability. The pandemic taught us that over-reliance on single sources can create fault lines and weaknesses in supply chains. Extending this analogy to inclusive finance, we need to adopt multiple solutions and pathways to building resilience for the most vulnerable consumers through greater choice. In fact, we need a systems view to address these complex problems because they're interrelated and reinforce each other. Through the session submissions and varied institutions who are presenting here this week, we hope to see this diversity in viewpoints, participation, and solutions. Just to give you some numbers, we received a total of 174 session submissions. These are split into 45 live sessions and 60 on-demand sessions. They will be viewed by over 2,000 attendees from over 123 countries. Now, back to diversity. I think also that diversity in human capital helps us all thrive. I continue to be encouraged that we're working with colleagues across multiple sectors: finance, technology, design, climate research, and other fields, to develop solutions in creative ways. We have seen a number of session submissions from all of you from various countries around the world. We want to continue to highlight cases of solutions in this global forum where we, as CFI, see ourselves as the facilitators of a global meeting place. I hope that Financial Inclusion Week continues to provide an open space for discourse for all of you, where you can both meet new people with whom you can collaborate and hear about cool things others are doing that you are encouraged to try. We are also evaluating Financial Inclusion Week from several perspectives this year, and we hope that you will help us by participating in that process. So here are 3 ways we are looking to gather feedback this year. We have a session rating that is quick and painless and located in the feedback tab. In every session that you attend, it will be available through a poll that will be facilitated by our CFI staff. And I hope that you will take a few moments to fill out that session rating. If you would like to provide more detailed feedback with open comments on specific sessions, we have that option as well. And we will be providing a link to the feedback form as each session ends. Finally, at the end, we would like to ask your feedback for the overall week and would appreciate your taking the time to fill out a final feedback form that will be circulated at the end of this week. I would like to thank you all in advance for your time in providing feedback. It means a lot to us, and it allows us to continue improving this important industry event. Now, one other note I wanted to make: Financial Inclusion Week regulars will be familiar with Sonia Niederhumer, who will be our graphic harvesting all of our live sessions. And this will be available at the end of each day on Financial Inclusion Week website. A word of thanks to Sonia for her amazing visuals and for making this a signature Financial Inclusion Week feature.
Welcome to Financial Inclusion Week 2024. As we complete 10 years of hosting Financial Inclusion Week, we reached out to global experts with unique perspectives to reflect on key milestones from the past decade.
It has been an exciting time for digital finance.
In the last decade, we've finally the opportunity to answer the question, financial inclusion for what?
In Kenya, where we are based, we've just about reached 85% of people using financial services when it was something below 35% 10 years ago. But there have been equally dramatic rises in countries like China, India, and Brazil.
We're not just speaking of payments and transfers, but a slew of services: credit, savings, insurance, even investments that lower income, often informal households can participate in and benefit from. A specific example can be seen in how digital platforms aspire to serve informal savings groups, either through tracking their credit histories or the credit histories of individual households, or helping groups secure external credit and savings. 10 years ago, savings groups, except in a place like India, were pretty much considered an annoyance by many formal institutions. But now a few see informal groups as valued customers.
The pandemic, although tragic and disruptive, was an important milestone, as during this period, millions of people around the world signed up for and used digital financial solutions for the first time. Many of these new users were women.
Mexico became one of the first countries in the region to regulate the financial sector, and today stands as the second largest fintech ecosystem in Latin America. Since then, the fintech industry has grown rapidly with a significant surge in mobile banking and digital payments, even producing several unicorns. And fintechs have, of course, leveraged technology and innovation to provide accessible financial solutions for small businesses and individuals. And their customer-centric approach has improved product design and their value proposition, spurring strong competition in the financial sector.
One of the real innovations that has strongly driven financial inclusion in Africa is the invention of mobile money, which started with M-Pesa in Kenya, started in 2006 and has really been growing since then.
So we've made some remarkable progress over the last decade, but right now much of the development sector has shifted its attention upmarket to those who are digitally capable and enabled. This excludes the majority of the poor in many countries.
While we have made progress, much remains to be done in including nearly 2 billion people who remain underserved by formal financial services, and 3 billion people who are excluded from digital financial services. Where do we go from here?
So when I think about financial inclusion in the next decade, I have 3 things that I'm hoping that we can really achieve. The first is really understanding the outcomes for financial inclusion. I think we've done a really good job as a sector in understanding what the short-term outcomes are in getting access to digital financial services. But what are those medium and longer term impacts of financial inclusion? How is financial inclusion helping to address poverty alleviation? How is financial inclusion helping to address gender equity? How is financial inclusion really leading to economic empowerment? The second thing that I really want us to understand as an ecosystem is the intersection of financial inclusion and emerging technology. I think we're all rather bullish and optimistic that technology, and especially emerging technology, is going to be able to broaden scale and impact on financial inclusion. But what does it really look like at a more concrete and granular level? How do we make sure that bias doesn't get coded in when we think about gender or marginalized communities like those in rural populations? And then the third thing, as an ecosystem, I hope we do a better job designing with the under and unserved. As an ecosystem, there's much more we can do to listen to those voices, to listen to those perspectives, and to be more human-centered in our design thinking. So how do we really tailor products, services, and offerings for underserved and unserved populations.
Instead of looking at inclusive financial services for the poor as a vertical, we need to see those financial services as an enabler. So that financial services are just a small but important cross-cutting support component of larger digitally enabled real-world economy activities.
My expectation is that as a sector, we will more efficiently leverage artificial intelligence and embedded finance to address systemic gaps in the real sector, such as in agriculture, and to develop innovative climate mitigation and adaptation models that address the very real risks of climate change. I hope that this next decade will see a proliferation of gender-smart digital finance solutions aimed at closing this gap.
And once easy, cheap, available, ubiquitous access to financial services has spread across the entire population, then on top of it come additional innovations such as digital credit, airtime credit, e-commerce, the whole new world of the gig economy, and we have yet to see additional innovations in the future. So financial inclusion enabled the growth of e-commerce, delivery services, gig work, and other ways that people use financial and economic tools from home.
We also need to think about how we use data to test, learn, and iterate so we can customize and tailor products in a much quicker time frame so that those who are unserved and underserved are better served.
So let's move slowly and mend as we go along. No need to break things.
So here's to another decade of innovation as we work together to resolve global challenges and systemic barriers to growth. Wishing you all a fantastic Financial Inclusion Week.
Thank you to all of those of you who contributed to the Financial Inclusion Week through the session submissions, through your work on the selection committee, through your tireless work behind the scenes. And thank you to the industry leaders in this video who took the time to record your thoughts on where we were 10 years ago and what is still left for us to do. Thank you again to Omo, Amolo, Graham, Kim, Payal, and Gabriela, who took some time and sent in their recordings. You also saw in the video, as I mentioned, some of those graphics, if you're new to Financial Inclusion Week, that Sonia made and were featured in there. Be sure to join us for the closing session of Financial Inclusion Week on Friday to watch her live illustrate a conversation between CFI's Jayshree Venkatesan and Axion's Karthik Venkataraman. As we draw to the close this first session today, on behalf of everyone at CFI, I want to welcome you once again to Financial Inclusion Week 2024. All of us at CFI humbly hope that this week sparks you onto a new challenge, an idea, or a debate, and that we will hear about it from you in one of the sessions next year. Have fun, enjoy, and also let us know what we can do better. Welcome, and with this, I consider the 2024 Financial Inclusion Week officially open. I will end this session here for now, and please come back in about 8 minutes and we'll recontinue our live agenda. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome once again on behalf of everyone here at CFI. Have a good Financial Inclusion Week.